Junior Cycle History students, let's run through 10 keywords that relate to the famine. Blight. Blight is a fungus that attacked the potato crop and caused them to rot. 1847, or sometimes you'll see Black 47, refers to the worst year of the famine. Interestingly, it wasn't actually the worst year of the blight, but it was the year where there were very high numbers of evictions, very high death rates, very high numbers of people emigrating. Indian corn, or sometimes it's called Peel's brimstone. It was maize, it was a foodstuff that was imported from America to Ireland to try and feed the starving Irish people, but they didn't know how to cook it, they didn't know how to prepare it, and it led to a lot of digestive issues and problems for people. And it's sometimes called Peel's brimstone because the guy who brought it over was a guy called Robert Peel, the Prime Minister Robert Peel. So yeah, Indian corn or Peel's brimstone. Public works. Basically, when the Conservative government came into power in Britain, they did not want to give the starving Irish people just food or money for doing nothing. So they engaged them in public work schemes. So things like building famine roads that went from nowhere to nowhere, building piers and harbours that were never really going to be used. So basically it was getting the starving Irish people to do kind of tough manual work, manual labour, in exchange for food or money. Soup kitchens are the same thing that we have today. So basically, poor starving people could turn up and receive a meal. They were originally set up by the Quakers, and then the government kind of followed suit and set up some of their own. They were ridiculously successful, they fed a lot of people. So naturally, the British government closed them all down. Workhouses. Workhouses were where nobody wanted to go. Basically, if you are starving, homeless, you've nowhere to go, you're basically on death's doorstep, you would go to a workhouse and they would put a roof over your head and you get some food. But conditions in the workhouses were horrific, and a lot of people actually opted for death rather than going to the workhouses. Families were also separated, disease was rampant. Workhouses really were a last stop kind of before death. And they were originally designed like that because they didn't want people taking advantage of the system and getting something for nothing. So yeah, really, really tough conditions in the workhouses. Coffin ships is the name given to ships that were transporting Irish people to other parts of the world, for example, Canada and America. They're called coffin ships because so many people died on board. Emigration. You will hear about emigration a lot in relation to the famine. So 1 million Irish people emigrated. So 1 million Irish people left their homes in Ireland and went abroad to places like England, Canada, America. Another 1 million people also died. So nice, easy figures to remember there. So 1 million emigrated, 1 million died. Subdivision. Subdivision refers to dividing your piece of land, or your piece of land getting smaller and smaller and smaller over the generations, okay? So we'll say I have a chunk of land and then I have 5 children. So I divide my chunk of land in 5, and then each of my 5 children has 5 children. So then they subdivide the land into 5 again. So it's 25 little bits of land. Basically, land is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and it gets so small that it's incredibly hard to make a living off it. It's incredibly hard to grow anything on it. So subdivision was one of the causes of the famine. Basically, one of the only crops that people could grow enough of in such a small piece of land would be potatoes. And then as a result of the famine, subdivision ended because the land went to the eldest son, and then the other sons usually emigrated or sometimes joined the clergy. The Irish diaspora refers to the scattering of Irish people and their descendants all around the world. So obviously 1 million people emigrated during the famine. So there are a lot of people abroad who would have Irish ancestry or Irish connections. If we just look to America, so presidents like Barack Obama and Joe Biden, they would have Irish ancestors.